Okay, let's unpack this. When you think of feudal fairy tale, you might picture dragons, princesses, that sort of thing. But what if I told you that beneath the surface of one of the most beloved examples, there's this really profound exploration of identity and belonging and, well, the very nature of good and evil. Today we're diving deep into Rumiko Takahashi's landmark series, Inuyasha. It's often summarized, as a story about a half-demon and a girl from modern Tokyo.
Right, the basics.
Exactly. But what we've discovered looking into it reveals it's far, far richer. It's like a complex negotiation between ancient Japanese folklore and very modern concerns. At its heart, Inuyasha uses this vibrant tapestry of yōkai and oni as a powerful language to explore those timeless human struggles.
What's truly remarkable here, I think, is how Takahashi repurposes these ancient myths. Our mission today is, well, to guide you through the series' intricate supernatural rules first, then trace those back to their deep roots in Japanese folklore, Shintoism, and Buddhism. And ultimately, we'll sort of synthesize how these age-old stories are transformed to articulate modern anxieties, making a tale set in feudal Japan surprisingly universal. And its characters, well, they feel psychologically complex.
So let's establish the supernatural ground rules of Inuyasha's world. Because, Takahashi didn't just throw magical creatures into a blender. She crafted this incredibly intricate system. And these aren't just arbitrary fantasy rules, are they? They seem foundational to the narrative's central themes, identity, prejudice, growth, all that.
Absolutely. Think of it almost like a meticulously constructed ecosystem. And when we talk about what English translations often simplify as demons, we're really talking about yōkai.
Right, yōkai.
And what's crucial, really crucial, is that this term yōkai encompasses this vast spectrum of beings in Japanese folklore, from the truly malevolent to the mischievous, even benign spirits. This moral ambiguity is central to Inuyasha. It allows for characters to exist on a spectrum beyond just simple good versus evil.
Right. And within this expansive category of yōkai, there's a distinct hierarchy, isn't there? It's not just a free-for-all.
No, not at all. You have the lower tier, almost fodder yōkai that pose, common threats. Then more individualized mid-tier figures like, say, the Thunder Brothers or Yura of the Hair. But at the apex are the daiyōkai.
The great yōkai.
Exactly, great yōkai. These are beings of immense power, ancient lineage, and significant influence, like Inuyasha's father Toga and his elder half-brother Sesshomaru. It's a structure that, interestingly, directly parallels the feudal society of the Sengoku period itself.
So the daiyōkai are basically the aristocrats of the demon world. Like the feudal lord.
Precisely. They mirror the powerful daimyo, concerned with bloodline purity and the inheritance of powerful artifacts that symbolize legitimacy. Much like feudal lords in their lands or titles, Sesshomaru's contempt for Inuyasha, his half-breed brother.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
It isn't just personal dislike. It really reflects that aristocratic disdain for anything perceived as like a stain on their noble lineage. It truly grounds the fantastical in a recognizable socio-political reality.
That makes perfect sense. Now, okay, if yōkai are this broad category, what about the oni? Because for someone maybe new to Japanese folklore, seeing those hulking horned figures might just make them think pure evil. How does Inuyasha complicate that image?
That's a great question, because the term oni, well, it's used with some deliberate ambiguity. Yes, sometimes it refers to the traditional hulking horned figures like Naraku's incarnation, Goshinki. They're definitely physical threats.
Right.
But the more fascinating adaptation, thematically speaking, is how oni can also describe a state of being, like a monstrous, all-consuming evil that isn't necessarily tied to species.
And that's where Onigumo comes in, isn't it? The human bandit.
Exactly, Onigumo. His malignant lust and ambition are so overwhelming that his name, Oni Spider, denotes his monstrous heart, not his actual physical form. His twisted human heart becomes the very nucleus for Naraku, the main villain.
Wow.
This internalizes the Oni concept. It shifts the source of monstrous evil from just some external force to the corrupted potential within the human soul. It's, frankly, a brilliant move by Takahashi.
It's a huge distinction. And speaking of distinctions, the Heinyu, or half-yōkai, they're absolutely central to everything, especially Inuyasha himself. Now, folklore often features human supernatural unions, but what's unique about Takahashi's Heinyu? What makes him different?
Well, our sources confirm that the specific term Hanyu and its detailed rules, They seem to be a neologism, basically Takahashi's invention.
Ah, okay.
And this allowed her to craft characters caught truly between two worlds. It gave her the perfect lens to explore these really complex identities. For Inuyasha, the most critical role, the one everyone remembers, is his periodic vulnerability.
The new moon.
Right. On the new moon, Sakubi, he completely loses his demonic power. He becomes fully human and incredibly vulnerable. It's a literal representation of being stripped bare, you know?
And this liminal state, being stuck in between, it clearly goes beyond just the physical changes, right?
It affects how he's treated, how he sees himself.
Oh, profoundly so.
Yeah.
This biological liminality is deeply mirrored by social alienation. Hanyu are pariahs. They're feared by humans and despised by pure-blooded yokai like Sesshomaru, who constantly throws around the slur half-breed.
Yeah, he's relentless with that.
This constant rejection fuels this deep loneliness and a desperate search for Ibisho, a place to belong, which is a primary driver for Inuyasha's character arc. And his internal conflict also manifests as this dangerous loss of control.
The berserker state.
Exactly. In mortal peril, especially if he's separated from his sword Tessaiga, his yokai blood can just overwhelm him. He goes into this mindless berserker state that's destructive to everyone around him, friend or foe.
So these two vulnerabilities, the fragile humanity on the new moon and the terrifying demonic rage, they aren't contradictory then. They actually tell us something deeper about his core struggle. All right, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. They're essentially two sides of the same coin. They represent the core existential threat for a Hanyu being completely consumed by either extreme of one's identity.
I see.
The new moon vulnerability highlights the danger of his humanity, making him too weak to survive in that harsh world. But the berserker state represents the danger of his demonic nature, erasing the compassion, the humanity that makes his life worth living, that connects him to others. Inuyasha's entire journey is this precarious, constant struggle to maintain a stable synthesis between these two halves. It's all about finding balance.
And beyond these inherent abilities and weaknesses, the world of Inuyasha is also defined by these incredibly powerful items and curses.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Shikan no Tama, the Jewel of Four Souls. It feels like this incredibly powerful, almost wish-granting artifact. But it also sounds like it's inherently tied to the wielder's intent, their morality. How exactly does Takahashi integrate that deep Shinto idea of one spirit, four souls into its very nature?
Well, the Shikan no Tama isn't just some generic wish-granting artifact. It's really the series' ultimate moral barometer. Its name, connected to Ichirei Shikan, one spirit, four souls, tells us the jewel's power is always a mirror. It amplifies your soul's intent, whether that's benevolent or, destructive.
So it reflects the user.
Precisely. It's a profound Shinto concept about the duality within us all. The Eramitama, the aggressive soul, Nijimitama, the gentle soul, Kushimitama, the wise soul, and Sakimitama, the nurturing soul. The jewel's state, whether it's pure or corrupted, is a direct reflection of the wielder's heart.
That's a fantastic way to explain its complexity. Then there's Miroku's Kazana, the wind tunnel. This is a hereditary curse, right? A void in his right palm that consumes almost anything but will eventually consume him. It creates this real tragic urgency, and you mentioned it ties into really ancient concepts.
It absolutely does. The Kazana is such a brilliant plot device because it connects directly to Buddhist concepts of karma and sort of inescapable destiny. Miroku, who often indulges in worldly pleasures, carries this curse that's a constant painful reminder of his mortality and the consequences of his ancestors' actions against Naraku. It forces him on a quest for purification, and a very personal one at that.
And the demonic swords, forged from the fangs of the great dog demon himself, they're legendary. In Inuyasha's sword, Tessaiga, it grows with his compassion for humans, is that right?
Yeah, that's a key aspect.
But Sesshomaru, his ruthless older brother, gets Tenseiga, a sword that can't even harm the living, it only heals. That's a huge contrast. What's the genius behind that design choice?
The genius there, I think, is that these swords are physical manifestations of their wielder's greatest character tests. Tessaiga, Inuyasha's sword of the human realm, literally has a protective barrier that only works for those with compassion for humans. It's a growing weapon, yes, gaining new abilities by absorbing demonic energy, but crucially, it reflects Inuyasha's own growth in strength and character, specifically his acceptance of his human side.
Okay.
Then Tenseiga, Sesshomaru's sword of the heavens, is a blade of healing. It's incapable of harming the living, but can resurrect the dead. For the initially ruthless Sesshomaru, it's this massive ideological challenge. It forces him to cultivate the very compassion he initially scorned, primarily through his unexpected relationship with the human child, Rin.
So these aren't just powerful weapons. They're essentially psychological tools, almost forcing the characters to evolve. And let's not forget this sacred spiritual power, Ryoryoku, wielded by the Miko, the priestesses like Kikyo and Kagome.
Yes, absolutely. Their abilities, purification, spiritual barriers, sacred arrows are drawn directly from Shinto tradition. And Kagome's spiritual power, once it's unsealed, is revealed to be immensely potent. It's a natural counterpoint to all the demonic energies flying around.
Right.
So yeah, all these items and abilities weren't just cool plot devices. They are tangible embodiments of the core psychological and thematic struggles each character must overcome. Tests of character, really.
It's clear Takahashi built a truly intricate world, isn't it? Just fascinating. But what's even more fascinating, maybe, is how deeply rooted these creations are in centuries of Japanese folklore. Can you walk us through some of those origins? How does she draw from that tradition?
Of course. The fundamental concept of yōkai itself is deeply rooted in Japan's indigenous Shinto beliefs. Shintoism, being an animistic religion, holds that spirits, or kami, reside in all things. Now, these spirits often have a dual nature. They can be benevolent, the Nigimitama, or violent and chaotic, the Aramitama. Yokai can be understood, broadly, as spirits not worshipped as major kami, often representing the untamed, unpredictable aspects of the world, more aligned with the Aramitama.
So it's not a clear line between good and evil, but more fluid, more nuanced.
Exactly. In folklore, the boundary between kami and yokai is often permeable. A fearsome local spirit could potentially become a protective kami if it was appeased properly. Or, conversely, a neglected kami could devolve into a vengeful yokai. This fluidity really informs the moral ambiguity in Inuyasha, which I think wisely avoids a simple good versus evil dichotomy for most characters. And when Buddhism was introduced to Japan, these beliefs syncretized. Oni, for instance, became associated with Buddhist hell, Jigoku, where wicked souls could be reborn as Oni or maybe Gaki, hungry ghosts. That's why, the common English translation of yokai as just demon often misses this rich, authentic folkloric spectrum entirely. It imposes a Western framework.
Fascinating. Let's maybe dig into some specific archetypes. The dog demons like Inuyasha and Sesshomaru in traditional Japanese folklore, and Inugami, or dog spirit, has a really dark origin, doesn't it? Quite grim.
It does. Very grim. Inugami were believed to be born from gruesome ritualistic acts like burying a dog and using its severed head, often employed for curses or to gain wealth. And families who were thought to wield them, the Inugami mochi, were often feared and ostracized.
Yikes.
But Takahashi performs this complete thematic subversion. The dog demons in Inuyasha are members of a noble, naturally occurring Daiyukai clan. She keeps the idea of bloodline and loyalty, sure, but strips away all the sinister rituals. She makes the dog yokai lineage a mark of aristocratic power and pride. And the protective aspect, inherent in dogs, becomes absolutely key to Inuyasha's heroism and his ability to wield Tsuga.
That's such a clever flip. It really changes the meaning. And what about the kitsune, the fox spirit? That's one of the most iconic figures in Japanese folklore, right? Known for shape-shifting and trickery.
Absolutely. Kitsune are renowned for their intelligence, long lifespans, and potent magical abilities that grow with age, often symbolized by an increasing number of tails.
Oh, it's the tails.
Their most famous powers are shape-shifting, especially into beautiful women, and creating illusions like foxfire, kitsunobi. They have this dual role in folklore, sometimes benevolent messengers of the god Inari, other times mischievous or dangerous Yako wild foxes.
And Shippo, the adorable little fox demon in Inuyasha's group, he's a direct embodiment of that trickster element, isn't he? But maybe less dangerous.
He really is. He perfectly represents the playful, juvenile trickster aspect of the kitsune myths. His abilities are like scaled-down versions of the classic powers, illusionary magic, which is often imperfect, some shape-shifting, and using kitsunobi. By presenting the kitsune archetype through this orphan child character, Takahashi kind of domesticates the more dangerous, seductive elements of the mythos. It makes him endearing and allows her to use his journey to explore themes of loss and, importantly, found family.
And then there are cats, Sengo's companion, Kira. What's the folklore behind her? She's got the two tails.
Yeah. Japanese folklore states that aged cats can become bakaneko, or changed cats. And if their tail splits in two, they become a more powerful type called a nekomata, a forked cat.
Ah, nekomata.
These nekomata were believed to have powers like shape-shifting, speech, and even fire or necromantic magic. Kira is a remarkably faithful adaptation. She clearly has the two tails, and she transforms from the small, cute kitten form into a large, fiery, saber-toothed flying battle form. She perfectly captures that dual nature, cute, companion, fierce protector that you see associated with cats in folklore.
Okay, and we mentioned on Yuzi earlier, the sort of hulking horned figures. Is that the whole story of how Takahashi uses them, or is there more to it?
Well, that's the visual archetype she uses for formidable antagonists like Goshinki, definitely. Big, scary, powerful.
Yeah.
But as we discussed, what's truly genius, I think, is her most significant adaptation, Onigumo.
Right, the human again.
Exactly. He's a human bandit, but his soul is so consumed by evil desire, Jainin, and this obsessive lust for Kikyo that he metaphorically becomes an Oni. His dark human heart then provides the nucleus for Naraku. This powerfully internalizes the Oni concept, shifting the source of monstrous evil from some purely external supernatural force to the corrupted potential within the human soul itself. It's profound.
So if I'm understanding this right, it seems like Takahashi often takes the external appearance, the core abilities, the cultural iconography of the yōkai, but then she fundamentally alters the why, their origins, their motivations, their thematic purpose. She changes those.
You've absolutely got it. She changes their origins, their motivations, and their thematic purpose to better serve her character-driven narrative and ultimately to create relatable emotional stakes for the audience. She's a storyteller first and foremost, using folklore as this incredibly rich palette, not necessarily a folklorist aiming for perfect transcription or accuracy.
Which brings us perfectly to part 3. How these adapted myths are then woven into Inuyasha's actual narrative to explore its most profound themes. And, interviews with Rumiko Takahashi herself reveal her creative process really is guided by character and drama, not strict folkloric accuracy.
Right.
She even mentioned designing an early antagonist, Yura of the Hair, as this beautiful young woman simply because it was, quote, more fun to draw. And it facilitated more interesting interactions than some, faceless monster. This character-first approach ensures that the supernatural elements always serve the human, or perhaps the half-human, drama at the core.
And this approach leads us directly to what is arguably Takahashi's most significant narrative invention. It functions as this incredibly powerful allegory for the modern struggle with identity, something that resonates deeply with you, our listener, even today, I think.
Absolutely. Inuyasha's liminal existence caught between the human and yōkai worlds. It's such a potent metaphor. It speaks to the mixed race experience, certainly, but also just that universal adolescent struggle of feeling caught between worlds, not quite fitting in anywhere.
Yeah.
His initial quest, remember, was to use the Shikan Jewel to become a full yōkai. That reflects a desire for sort of monoracial identity, maybe a common stage in identity development for many people who feel in between. His journey, though, is ultimately about accepting his hybridity. It's about finding his ibasho, his place to belong.
And crucially, finding it not by changing who he fundamentally is, but by finding people who accept him as he is.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for us watching or reading? This struggle speaks to a universal human experience of alienation, doesn't it? Of grappling with an identity that feels contradictory or somehow flawed. His found family, this group of relative outcasts, Moroku with his curse, Sango with her trauma, Shippo the orphan, and Kagome the time traveler that becomes his Zabasho. It's a place where their damaged or hybrid identities aren't just tolerated, but accepted and even valued. It's a really powerful message about belonging.
Yeah, it really is.
Inuyasha's narrative also beautifully illustrates the reconciliation of these fundamental dichotomies we see throughout. Take Kagome, for example. She's the literal and symbolic bridge, right? Traveling between the feudal past and modern present via the Bone Eater's well. Her modern knowledge and sensibilities offer novel solutions sometimes, but the past forces her to mature, to connect with her spiritual heritage. It shows that the past and present are linked, and progress often needs reconciliation, not just replacement.
And that reconciliation extends to the clash between sacred spiritual power, the Riroku of the priestesses, and demonic aura, the Yuki of the demons. But again, it's not presented as a simplistic good versus evil binary. The Shikan Jewel itself embodies this ambiguity, remember, reflecting the wielder's heart, mirroring Shinto's dual spirit potential benevolent or destructive. It forces characters, and us, to look inward at motivation.
And the central romances, like Inuyasha and Kagome, or even the slow burn between Sesshomaru and Rin, they directly challenge rigid social and, racial taboos within that world. They triumph through empathy and connection. It's a powerful statement that love, or at least deep care, can truly transcend prejudice.
And that's where the series truly excels in its ambiguity of good and evil. Characters are given genuine psychological complexity. They're far from simplistic binaries. Sesshomaru's arc is just a masterclass in this.
Totally agree.
He begins as this ruthless antagonist, believing strength comes only from purity and power, despising weakness, especially Inuyasha's perceived weakness. But his father's gifts, the healing Tenseiga, and honestly, Inuyasha's very existence as a challenge, they undermine that worldview. His unexpected, almost accidental relationship with the human child Rin compels him, slowly, to redefine strength to include compassion. He never stops being a formidable daishikai, but his capacity for compassion grows, showing that even the proudest, most seemingly rigid characters can change.
And the tragedy of Kikyo and Naraku further complicates things, doesn't it?
Yes.
Kikyo, she's a ghost animated by hatred and regret, and she oscillates between her sacred duty and this bitter resentment towards Inuyasha. It's messy.
Very messy. And Naraku, the arch-villain, is ultimately driven by the tragically human, unrequited, obsessive love of his human core Onigumo for Kikyo. His dying wish, wanting her heart even in death, reveals that the series' great evil was rooted in twisted human emotion, not just some external demonic force. It started with a human desire.
Wow.
And this complexity brings us, I think, to the series' core underlying theme, Juka, or purification.
Purification.
This is a Shinto concept, and it involves cleansing kigar, which is like spiritual pollution. Things like hatred, loneliness, jealousy, bitterness. The Miko's power is explicitly purification, and the ultimate goal regarding the Shikan jewel is to purify it with a selfless wish for it to just disappear, ending its corrupting influence.
Oh, I see.
So Inuyasha's journey can be seen as a purification of his self-loathing and his struggle with identity. Sesshomaru's journey is a purification of his arrogance and his narrow definition of strength. This framework aligns the narrative deeply with foundational Shinto Buddhist philosophy. It suggests that evil isn't just an external force, but often a form of spiritual pollution that can potentially be cleansed through connection, empathy, and self-acceptance.
So wrapping this up, Inuyasha truly transcends that initial feudal fairy tale label, doesn't it? It does it through this masterful synthesis of ancient folklore and really modern, relatable storytelling. It doesn't just borrow monsters, it revitalizes these ancient archetypes, using yōkai and oni as this flexible language to explore timeless struggles of identity, alienation, and ultimately the healing power of connection.
And that creative adaptation we talked about is absolutely key. Takahashi transformed the dark, ritualistic origins of the Inugami into a story of aristocratic pride and protection. She domesticated the potentially dangerous kitsune into an orphan child to explore themes of grief and found family. And most significantly, perhaps, she internalized the external threat of the Oni, making it a symbol of the monstrous potential lurking within the human heart itself. These reinterpretations give the stories relatable emotional stakes and powerful character motivations that resonate globally, far beyond Japan.
Absolutely. The series' central message, then, feels like one of reconciliation, bridging all those divides. Human and yōkai, past and present, tradition and modernity, and maybe, most importantly, bridging the conflicting parts of oneself. Inuyasha's journey of accepting his hybridity shows us that true strength isn't necessarily purity or absolute power, but embracing a complex, compassionate, and interconnected identity.
Well said.
So here's where it gets really interesting, maybe something for you to think about. Consider what other beloved fantasy or sci-fi stories might also be secretly using ancient myths and cultural narratives as a powerful, yet maybe hidden language. A way to talk about our very modern concerns and struggles with identity and belonging. What could you deep dive into in your own favorite stories, looking for those hidden layers?